Hey, welcome back to Wildlands Zoo, and welcome to the first episode of Season 3. Following a wonderful Christmas time off, we are finally moving outwards, away from what we've already built and into new pastures, as we are going to crack this season and get this zoo finished. So far, if you've been following along, you've seen us build up the entire new riverbanks area. You've also seen us re-renovate the zoo countless times. And I think it's about time that we start putting in new habitats, new species, and finally looking towards the completion of Wildlands Zoo, especially because we're starting to hit that point where it doesn't load very well. I'm also trying out a bit of a new video style with you today. I will ask your feedback for that at the end. I am infinitely grateful for any and all feedback you can give, so stick around and keep an eye out for that. So what are we doing today, I hear you plea? Well, today we are going to delete everything that we did in this area, just marking out areas. Don't worry, we're not deleting the whole zoo. And we're going to start on our Chinese Asian area before moving on to Oceania and then eventually to Africa to complete the zoo. Now, those that may have seen before, just behind the red panda habitat, we put down this weird sort of slopey path. We're going to go back, delete all that, and actually put it down correctly this time. And this will, in the next couple of episodes, become our Japanese-inspired garden that we're going to build at the top of this hill. Down below, however, is where we're focusing our efforts first. And today we're going to build the initial building, as well as all of the outside decorative areas for the Bengal Tiger, which is going to be one of our main focus animals within this area of the zoo. We'll likely bring a couple of friends along as well and manage to get a couple of extra habitats in there. However, even while building this, I managed to change the animal list twice, so I'm not going to commit to anything at this stage because it may not go well. Now, this is also being inspired by a piece of inspiration, or it's not art, I believe it's actually a architectural drawing that I saved right when I first started Wildlands, and I thought it's been a year and a half, we might as well do it. And this focuses around a big round outside sunken area where the guests walk around right close to the fence and can see all the way around and leaves a nice big open space. And naturally, my first thought of what animal would suit that is one that is going to be able to eat the guests, so we are going with the Bengal Tiger. But this also forms part of a crossroad, so this is right at the bit where our Japanese, Oceania, Africa and South American areas meet, and will also form probably one of the main ways that guests will take to get to those areas. So we want something that is going to invite people to keep moving. We don't want them all stood in a group, but equally we want them to be able to sit back and enjoy such a nice open Chinese inspired space. Now, we could have gone very, very thematic with this. I haven't, spoiler, and I think it turned out really well. But I think next episode, when we actually come back to do the inside of the Bengal Tiger habitat, that's where we're going to bring a bit more theming in. So don't despair if you feel like we've gone a little bit too subtle on the Chinese elements. That is intentional, and that's so that we can have a wonderful contrast with what we build next time. Now, we are going to initially start off by just getting some of this basic structure down. So what you can see here is I've dropped a curved wall into the ground, giving it a bit of a skirting around the outside, and now we're just going to use the path to finally get that wonderful, clean, crispy edge against the concrete there. With that in place, that then sets the level that we can start building our building from. Now, the building itself is meant to be fairly innocuous. You're not really meant to see it. And I tend to draw all of my buildings out way ahead of actually building them in Planet Zoo in a form of architectural style drawings. And this turned out a little bit different to how I originally drew it, but it is very much inspired by a lot more modern architecture of a lot of glass and not really having such a big impact on the sightlines. Now, to achieve that, it kind of has to be sunk into the ground. So we're doing that first. We're digging down. And we've also got another blue rectangle you can see there. And those of you that are long-term viewers of Wildlands will know that blue rectangles mean habitats. And that is essentially going to be an indoor habitat for something other than the Bengal Tiger. Now, because we learn from our mistakes, we are also going to bring a main staff area into the building. Those of you may remember from the Amazonian building, we did not do that and it caused us no end of issues. So we're also going to make this building the main staff area for most of the Asia area over this side. We'll set up work groups for that, and it's also then going to have a large keeper hut and a large staff room built within it, so that we don't have to worry about trying to place them outside. Now, a lot of what we do in the building today is probably not going to make a whole host of sense, and that's because that's more for next episode, but it was important that we get this building built so that we knew the scale of what we can do outside. For now, I am just making sure we get those pathways correct, so we're going to use the grid tool there just to line everything up and give ourselves a plaza area inside. We're going to go a little bit heavy on the educational items in this season as well. A bit like I committed to last season where I said we were going to be a lot more detail orientated. That is going to continue through, and therefore we need to leave ourselves some space so that we can get in all the educational bits that we need. Now, at the point where I was placing this originally, the habitat in the middle here was originally going to be for the Komodo dragon, which is why it's so big. That's now not the case. The Komodo dragon will be moving to the Oceania building with a whole host of friends. So actually what's going in here now doesn't need this much room, but I decided we'll keep it that way. A, because I don't want to go back and rebuild it, and B, because it means we can do an absolutely spectacular habitat for our little friend. Now, as you can see here, we're just going to hide away some staff rooms and some keeper huts. I'm trying to put these out the way so that they don't impact the guests too much, but unfortunately, unless we put them like half a mile up the road, that's kind of impossible. But we're going to make use of this space, so we're going to bring in a keeper hut, a staff room, and a power transformer, and we'll just slap a door on the front of it, and it'll be hidden. You guys know it's there because you've seen the video, but you won't see it when we actually go around the building. Now, on the upper level here, again, we're not going to do too much here yet. This will eventually become a plaza, and what we're just building here is a sort of staff car park area at the side. I'm very conscious as we build Wildlands that you need to be able to get around it with vehicles because they've got to bring animals in, they've got to bring food everywhere. We use our little buggies that we've got parked around the zoo, but where are they going to park? So anytime we build a big building like this, I kind of want to make sure we've got a staff area that's big enough for them to get everything they need into there, and this is kind of part of it. Now, before we pop a roof on the building, again, we're going to learn from experience, and we're going to do the inside structural elements first. So in this case, it means getting a trim put round ready for the roof to sit up against, and then turning our attention to the raised platform in the middle of the space and making sure that is all decorated up appropriately. The way we're going to do that is we're going to use these wall trims, which I neglect to use all the time because I forget they exist, but they actually work out really, really well. And that's going to create a nice sort of metal plasticky step on top of our wall, which we can use to start off our fencing from. Now, I really want to bring in more wood. So as you may all remember, I have an absolute obsession with the wood cladding in the game. I think it is the best texture of wood and comes in the most amount of sizes for me to be able to build something with. So we're going to use that to form an edge to our pathway here. We will eventually be putting down a fake floor on this upper level as well, just to tidy it all up. I don't mind the texture, but I do mind the curbs, and you can't turn them off on elevated platforms, which is an absolute pain. Now, if you've made it this far through the video, then firstly, welcome, thank you. But equally, you may have noticed that I'm not begging for your likes, your comments, or your subscribes at the very start, and that's because I would like you to get some value out of the video first. However, YouTube's gonna YouTube, and it's time for me to ask for your help. If you're enjoying the video, please make sure to tippy tap the like button, and if you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe by clicking the button below. As always, I really encourage your feedback, your comments, even if you're just saying hey, but at the very minimum, pop an emoji down in the comments below, all for the sake of engagement. And while that is slowly becoming a bit of a channel meme, the fact of the matter is, it kind of helps the channel out immensely. It helps the videos get shown to more people, it helps more people join up with the channel, and we're growing quite an interesting little community here. I have some fairly big plans for giving back to you guys a little bit more as we go through this year, as well as looking to expand out the range of games and the range of options, so now is a brilliant time to jump on board if you are not already. As always, if you're a long-term subscriber, you are the best. But if you're joining us today, welcome. And don't worry, you'll be the best in about a year's time too. All in all, thank you very much for watching, and let's get back on with it. So all we're doing, as you can see here with these wonderful little cladding pieces, is making a nice little fence just to stop people falling over. And it's these little details that I really enjoy making. Like, they turn out so well. and I think this really adds a nice little element of modernism to the building. However, with those done, we can turn our attention to the roof, and we're going to do a raised and slanted roof. Now, the idea of this building is, from the Japanese walking area, you can see through the building to the lake beyond. Now, the Africa area is going to be centered around that lake. So the idea would be that you can see through this building down onto the lake, see the African area. And again, we're forming that element of a crossroads so that you know where you're going before you get there. To achieve that, we're going to do a angled roof with glass sides. And this basically is just a straight diagonal roof. So we're going to put 2 sets of glass at one end, 1 set of glass at the other, and then we're going to build a roof to sit between them. But that lines up perfectly to allow that sight line straight through. And also from within the building, you can look out at the trees and feel like the building is surrounded by a forest and not necessarily a zoo. Now, I wanted something a little bit more custom made than just the generic roof. So we're going to take the opaque glass as a base, because I think that gives a nice little tile texture. We'll use the cladding beams to make some ceiling beams. And then on top of it all, we're going to place down some grass panels. And we're actually going to do a nature roof or a planted roof. And this is a bit of a test run because the Oceania area, which is going to be more circular and domed, will also have a planted roof. Now, it does look a little bit checkerboardy at this point. Don't worry, we're going to go back and fix that. And to start to fix that, we're going to use the little grass panels to fill in the corners, and then the more planted tropical panels to really bulk out that plant life. Now, once we've got it sufficiently bulked up with these plant panels, we're then going to come back with the buffalo grass and start filling in some of those areas, just really adding a bit of texture. The idea is to keep getting as many different greens in there, and I also add a bit of the dry buffalo grass as well, just as a bit of a yellow highlight. I'm also going to bring in the bluegrass. Now, the bluegrass is going to be the absolute MVP for this entire build, but we're going to angle it slightly so that when the roof is angled, it now points upwards. This seemed like a good idea at the time. I've no idea if it actually works. You tell me, when you see the cinematic, does it look good? If not, they're all on the wonk, and we're going to have to go back and straighten them up a bit. Now, those trims are coming back again to be put into good use, and this is just to cover over all of the sort of loose ends on the edge of the roof. What we do want to make sure is we drop them low enough that the plants can sort of dangle over the edge. We want it as the guests come along to sort of be able to see and get an idea that there is a planted roof up there. Then we're going to run that all the way down on each edge, cap off the ends so that it's nice and square, and then we're just going to give it a tilt and then drop it down into place. We're going to make a little version on the back edge. This is just going to cover up the backstage area inside the building. I'm going to use the little metal poles there to create like an air vent, and I think that worked out really well. Gives them like a bit of ventilation going through. Now, in the future, we will get around to putting a plaza on the front of this, so we're going to make a sort of glass awning. What I do off camera is I'll also come back and add some cables and some poles, but for now we're going to make sure we get a gutter in at the bottom just to capture all of that water. As well as running some metal poles and metal edging up each side of the glass just to frame it off. Very simple this, very sort of tidy, but I just thought it added a nice little element of structural, I don't know, interest. You tell me, you'll see it at the end there. I think it works. I think it worked. Now we can start doing the real meat and potatoes of today's video, which is going to be the outside of the habitat. Now I want this to be somewhat oriental, somewhat Chinese, but I'm not going to go too heavy. So we're going to start off by just making a couple of wall sections that can hide some of the bits I don't want the guests to see, like the edge of the car park, but also just to break up the sight lines as you walk down here. The idea is because you're coming down an elevation into a lower area, once you're down there, you can't really see back up where you came. But then as you walk down into it, you're not having your view blocked. In addition to the walls, we're also going to go extremely heavy with the planting. But a bit like with the roof, we're going to keep it all to fairly just greens. We don't want too much colour added. And the effect at the end is amazing, and I really, really like it. The bamboo obviously coming in clutch for that, but also the creosote makes its return as a bush. A couple of palms just to add a little bit of visual variety to it. I do go back off camera and add a couple of hedgerows to the hedges just to add a bit of a highlight. But you've got to remember the Asian garden behind is going to have so much colour in it that we kind of want this to be a little bit more desaturated. In an effort to add more detail, we're also going to go a little bit crazy with the edge of the path. So while I love the gravel path texture, The reason I don't use it very often is it has these very square straight edges, which I think look a bit bad against the sort of pebbly circular shapes. So where we can, we're going to cover that over, and pretty much just with buffalo grass, bluegrass, a couple of stones, and as you'll see a bit later on, pig face everywhere because it is a wonderful weed. Now, as we make that join up to the Japanese garden trail that comes down from our Japanese garden above, I want to add a little bit of initial planting in. And one of them is these spruce trees. Now, by dropping them into the floor until you just get the odd one or two branch sticking out, it makes this wonderful low-level bush. And we've used that along the edge here, and that will come in quite a lot into our actual garden trail. Behind it, we're going to have what will eventually be a habitat for the red-crowned crane. However, that's going to be quite a while off, so for now, we're going to build up a little rock face just so that we don't have this ugly lump of dirt separating the two out. We may come back and actually completely destroy this when we get around to doing that habitat, but for now, it just gives it a little bit of a rocky embankment behind. As always, when doing rocks, I'm going to go in and add a couple of plants into all the little nooks and crannies, just to make sure that we get a bit of visual interest on there. Now, moving on to today's pet project, and that is I want to do some painted walls, and you'll see a couple of elements of this as we go in. They'll be in the background and they'll be in the ended cinematics. What I will say is if you do want a tutorial on these, do let me know in the comments below, and I will certainly do a little bit more work on them. Where we're not going to put them in, however, I do want to still just have a bit more interest to the walls. So for that, we're going to use the variegated ivy, which is an absolute brilliant plant, and I encourage all of you to slap this on as many flat surfaces as you can, because it's a great way of adding a bit of interest, but also it gives you a nice dark green colouring against those lighter walls. Now, with the bulk of the outer planting done, we can turn our focus to the edge of the habitat, and this I want to be a gravelly and dirty and sort of unmanaged area, because it is going to be on the other side of the fencing, so it's not going to be maintained as much, but equally it adds a little bit of a distraction away from the more tidier areas that surround it. So to do that, we're going to start off by making a couple of different handfuls of faux rocks and pebbles, so we're going to scatter them everywhere. I've left a few holes and they'll come in useful later for adding in some lanterns. And then we're going to edge the bit where the path meets the framework with these wonderful little concrete steps, and they just add a nice different grey in there. I do go back actually later on and change this concrete to a bit more of a muddier grey. It's a little bit blue here. We're going to pop in some grass and some weeds amongst the pebbles, both buffalo grass, bluegrass and some pig face, just to really add a bit more texture and detail into that and make it look a little bit less maintained. Finally, we're going to bring in the bedalias, and these are kind of just adding, I could have used nettles, but these just add a little bit of a more, I don't know, authentic plant feel. I think because they're newer, they've been modelled nicer, but they're also a nice, very desaturated green. In order to add a little bit of breaking up of these sight lines, we're going to bring in some trees, but we're going to use the birch, and that's because it's still a tree that you would regularly find in England, but is also quite copious in Asia as well. These they're nice and thin, so they don't take up too much room, but they also add a little bit of height to this very open area. Now, in order to add a bit of texture to the concrete, or what was left, I'm going to make a little bit of a brush out of decals, and this is going to be in sort of a darker grey. I'm just going to splatter this everywhere, and it's just to add a little bit of dirt and a little bit of like pebbles and soil and all the things that will generally get kicked through the fence and just end up on this middle area. It looked really well. Let me know what you think though. It's something I thought I'd try and see how it goes. Now we're going to make two barriers. The first one's going to be made from bamboo, and we're going to colour it a more desaturated brown, and that's because in the UK, bamboo generally doesn't look orange for very long. We're then going to use that to make a netting fence, and we're just going to drop that into the floor and go steal one of our cleaners from somewhere else in the zoo, make them model it for us, check that it's the right height, which it is, brilliant. We don't want to people to be able to wander into the tiger habitat, but equally we don't want it to obstruct their view. And then we're also going to have a secondary fence made out of zookeeper rope, which is more of a security fence. And this is to stop the tiger climbing out and also to stop people that get past the first fence from falling in. Now, a lot of what made this habitat take so long to build is the fact that we're on a circle, which means things like these fences here, every single one needs to be slightly angled and slightly tweaked just to make sure they fit in. Now, to add a little bit of interest to the path, I've made some duck boards, and these are just made from stained timber. And then what we're going to do is just sort of break them. We're going to sort of drop elements of them into the ground, sink them under, put a pile of pebbles on top, all of the good stuff. And then we're going to run these around the path at various intervals and essentially stage them out. And these are, in practical terms, stop the pebbles getting kicked everywhere. They also form a nice, stronger area to stand on. I think they just break up the gravel a little bit, and it's a nice little effect. And then we're going to bake all of that in with some more pig face, because these are just wonderful weeds. Oh God, I love the pig face. Adding in a couple of amenities now, we're going to pop down some bins. We're also going to pop down some benches. As I mentioned before, this place very much is the crossroads to most of the zoo. So you can imagine coming down this section, people are going to be wanting somewhere to sit, not just to see the tiger, but just because it is a bit of a walk. So we're going to run these all the way around because we've got this nice circle. It makes a wonderful little social area as you transverse through. So it worked out really well. Now you can see a little bit of the wall painting in the background there, and that's what today's video was very much going to be about. However, it's really only visible in the final cinematics. But what we're doing is I'm just adding a little bit of texture to these walls. So we've got paintings in some, we've got some bamboo in others. And I want to know how you feel it all turned out, because I absolutely love these paintings and I'm going to have to do them pretty much in every other area of the zoo now. It just, we've got basically on one side, we've got a wonderful mural of a Bengal tiger. And then over this side, we've got these 3 Chinese historical paintings of Bengal tigers. And you'll see those a bit more in the cinematic. As we near the home straight, we're going to bring in some lanterns. We're going to use these shrines, sunk them into the floor and add a light into the middle of them just to give them a bit of brightness going around the habitat. And then we're going to bring in some speakers just to add some ambiance. And with that, I think this outer area is pretty much finished. So let's have a look, shall we? Cue excited schoolgirl noises from myself. This turned out so well. The building, although it looks a little bit like a swimming pool right now, will look brilliant once we finally get all the insides done next episode. That roof, I'm happy with how it looks. The sight line works. You can stand at the top and look straight through the building into the area beyond. And then as we walk down from what will be our Asian garden, you have this wonderful view of this, at the moment, modern building, but that will end up with some more historical cladding on the outside of it once we do the outer area. This pathway, wonderfully thematic. You got a little peek at the mural there. We'll come back to it in a moment. And wonderful circle area, which means that you can see everywhere you want to go. Different places shooting off. And even though we've only used sort of 2 or 3 different types of plants, the different greens just add such a richness to it that I'm loving it. Now, if we jump into the sunlight, let's have a look at how our painted walls turned out. I'm really happy with these, to be fair. It was an experiment I wanted to do. I'll probably end up bringing a sign into the space next to this one. That's a painting of our future resident within this habitat, looking wonderful. And then over the other side of our big entranceway, we've got the 3 Chinese murals, all based on historical paintings, in fact, historical paintings from a museum in China of Bengal tigers. I'm not entirely sure how all of this took so long to do, but I think it was worth it. I think it's certainly atmospheric, I think is the word. We've got those little accents, little elements there, and those 3 paintings. We do need to add some more signage and obviously some more educational elements. We'll do that when we do the habitat next episode. But for now, I think we've created a brilliant start to get this area up and running. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to tippy tap that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you are not subscribed. I am very excited for Wildlands Season 3. Let me know down below how you feel about this slower and more drawn out element of the video. If you prefer something a little bit quicker, we can certainly revert back. However, for now, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week where we are going to put the finishing touches on this building, get our 2 new animal habitats sorted, and start moving on to some of our other areas, and finally taking steps to getting Wildlands Zoo complete. I will see you then. Goodbye.